Hey everyone, welcome back to the Matt Report Podcast, Season 8. Very excited to have this discussion today with my good friend, Cory Miller. He was on the show a short season ago talking about his acquisition of iThemes to Liquid Web and what that journey was about to start for him. And now we have Cory leaving Liquid Web and starting something new. So what better time to have Cory back is to talk about this new chapter. And chapters was really sort of the thread throughout this entire conversation of, look, we're all doing these things in, what we're calling these chapters, and we're not just defined by a single chapter, we're defined by the whole story. And that's really what Cory and I get into today. Just a great person. And I do have one ask. If there's, something that you think Cory should hear from you as an entrepreneur, as a founder, he's looking for his new avenue, his new way of creating his new business life. So if you have something that you want to connect with him for, go to corymiller.com and reach out and say, hey, here's an idea. Here's what you might want to pursue with your talents. Or I have an idea. What do you think about it? I'm sure he's willing to talk to you about stuff like that. So check it out at corymiller.com, mattreport.com/subscribe. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Share this podcast with everyone. We're going to start spreading the wings of the Matt Report and talking to more people in and around the WordPress space. Let's get into the episode.
Yeah, so I'm formerly the artist known as the CEO of iThemes and founder of iThemes. But yeah, like you said, we were acquired by Liquid Web last year, January 2018, and I recently left about 3 weeks ago to start again. That's the phrase I'm kind of using, Matt, is start again. It's not starting over because I'm starting from a different place than I did 11 years ago when I started iThemes, but it's been a good time. So, in answer to the question I think you're kind of alluding to, which was how did last year go? I've heard a lot of stories. I have friends that have sold companies. I've got, enough stories and, in entrepreneurship to kind of bounce things off of. And I tell you what, really, truly in reflection, they did what they said they were going to do. They wanted to do, which was keep iThemes a little bit separate, what I called outside of the bubble. At 600 people, there's going to be bureaucracy. That's just part of it, no matter how good and how well run the company is. I'm sure Apple has that too, right? And different companies we could talk about, Starbucks, I don't know. But they really did keep us out from the bubble and let us do what we did. There's always transitions, that happen that are difficult, and those happen. Just, for instance, switching G Suite from being owned by one organization over to the other, it's kind of a headache, but it's a part of business. But I really hand all of that experience to Joe Osterling, the CTO. I don't know his exact title now. I think he's an EVP or something now of technology, but he and AJ Morris came in, it's been like 3-4 years ago now, to Oklahoma City and talked to us. And I tell you what, I have a lot of respect for Joe and how that deal all happened. And now, my right-hand guy, good friend Matt Danner, is leading the ship at iThemes, and couldn't honestly, from my perspective alone, anticipated a better transition with me pulling out of the company, the team, and all that.
There's like this whole jaded concept of entrepreneurship and running a business. A lot of it centers around like, gee, how much money are you making? How many customers do you have? It's all that vanity metrics and things like that. And myself personally, starting an agency, running it for nearly a decade, not walking away from it, but exiting it and seeing it still run as a healthy entity. Like, that is what entrepreneurship is about. And man, these are all chapters in our lives. Like, I know you're big on like definition, like defining life, defining career, defining happiness. There are things that you learn from these new experiences that you would have never been able to, like, hey, I'm the CEO of iThemes, but going into Liquid Web, I'm sure there's countless lessons that you have never been exposed to that you were able to learn from, and myself the same at Pagely. But do you have a handful of takeaways or 1 or 2 takeaways that was like, wow, this is eye-opening, and I've seen a lot?
Absolutely. I mean, I had worked in bigger organizations, not as big as Liquid Web before iThemes, but iThemes was 20, 25 people. At its height, I think we might have had 27, right? And so that was kind of my bulk of my experience in getting into a bigger organization. They're led by a really great leadership team that have been together for a long time. And there was a lot of lessons there, how you approach, you're just a professional. I'll tell you though, but me personally, is honestly, Matt, I had got to cruising altitude and set it on automatic pilot on some things, and that whole experience was, I kind of level up, I'm not saying we were just uber successful and I could just, oh man, lavish and could just throw money out the window or, all that kind of stuff. But I really realized now I had set certain things on automatic pilot, particularly with my own skill development. So, you mentioned like my personal website, CoryMiller.com. I'm going back and trying to figure out how to do, the different tools, not the iThemes tools. I knew how to use those, right? But I'm kind of coming back with a fresh perspective and going, I let some things lag.
What is this Gutenberg thing that I'm dragging around the site? I don't even know.
Yeah, what is Gutenberg? How do I enable the classic editor? I think, by the way, as an aside, I think Gutenberg's going to be great down the road, and it looks really, really cool. Coming from an old print guy here, it looks pretty cool, but that really is it, if I'm being honest, is I let some skill sets and things kind of lag over the years, and phoned it in on some things. So that experience was pushing me out of that, and seeing how professionals that have ran, hundreds and hundreds of $1 million companies, how they do it, and also are pretty cool people too, was a good lesson. So yeah, it was, and now here I am starting again, going, oh man, it probably wasn't good to put it on autopilot on certain things. Yeah. And so now I'm having to do some hard work. I'm working pretty hard right now, and that's okay. It's a good experience for me.
Before we pull off of Liquid Web, what was one particular challenge that you faced that that leveled you up? And I'll give you a second to think about that and give you my own example. At Pagely, having joined now nearly 2 years ago, I had negotiated big, with air quotes for those of you who are just listening, big projects with the agency, and by big I mean $50,000, $60,000 projects. Big for us. Talked to a lot of big-ish clients, but when I got to Pagely, it was a whole different ballgame of dealing with large brands, corporations, lawyers, procurement officers, and that was something that in the beginning, speaking honestly, I was like, man, can I handle this? Is this me? Am I able to adapt to this? Fast forward 2 years later, the answer is yes, or at least I hope so. And that was one thing that was like in the beginning, I was like, wow, I don't know. Like, I feel like the dumbest person in the room. But after a couple rounds of it, I was like, oh, I know how to handle this now. I'm much more confident with it. Was there anything like that with you?
Two things stick out really is, a really professional, experienced view of financials and data. And that really struck me. Whereas in the past, honestly, we'd go, hey, is this a good idea? Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd talk it through a little bit. And so a really sharp view of financials and data, more so even data, the broader picture of data. And the second is, I always say that like in corporate environments, that spreadsheets and slide decks are the love language of executives. And I kind of did that with a laugh, going, I never had to do in-depth financial models and then presentations for people. I had partners, but they were silent partners and mostly encouraging partners, not in the business. And trust and respect, and knew me, and probably, said, okay, we trust you and your gut a little bit too much at times, probably. But the whole presentation side too, those are kind of actionable things, like very, practical skill sets. But there's really something to that, especially as I'm starting again going, I want to eventually put products, services out into the market, and I don't have a team around me that builds sales pages and writes copy and does all that stuff. And so that deck thing, I use it as a little joke, a little ribbing joke. That's their love language, in the corporate environment, not just liquid, everybody. But I'm like, that's a really good skill set to be able to highlight up, not a wall of text, but go, here are the key points for someone to remember. That's just good communication.
Yeah,
Practice.
and it's a different skill set, than I'd even argue like a WordCamp or just like if you're doing a speaking gig, because that's something that it's, for the most part, like once you do it a couple of times, like you're in your comfort zone, you're talking just about you, and you're not particularly trying to convince anybody to like, we should do this. It's more of like, here, let me paint this picture about myself, and at the end of this conversation, there'll be a lesson learned here. So I agree. Like, again, that's a great reminder. A lesson that I've learned with Pagely is presenting to customers like high dollar accounts that I'm just doing, like you and I are doing right now through Zoom, and being able to navigate slides without being in person with somebody, and just having somebody like peering at their web camera and just being like, what is he saying? Like, it's a very stressful situation. And it takes time to really get that down well.
Those kind of things, like you even mentioned public speaking. I mean, that was another thing. I got to a level where I felt I could communicate well and I was successful at it. And then I just kind of said, okay, I'm there.
Right.
And we had this mantra at iThemes, like, no one has arrived. And I honestly broke it, right? I said, well, okay, I don't have to get better. I think some of that was a little bit of fatigue, I mean, I don't know how many WordCamps I did, 45, 50 maybe over 11 years. And I just got so fatigued. And I think that was part of the cruise control mentality I put on. But it didn't serve me well for next chapter.
So that chapter, how did you, or how have you been bullet pointing the framework for what you'll do next?
It's so funny. Every day it feels like it becomes more clear, Matt, and I'm sure you understand this too, is, when I gave notice and said I'm going to take my leave, I didn't have a lot figured out, honestly. Lindsay and I had set aside some money to have time to figure it out, but I didn't have another thing that I was like burning to go. I've always wanted to do this software product, or I always only wanted to do this thing. I didn't have any of that, and that's the unsexy truth about it. I think a lot of people asked me the question, and I was like, I don't know. And they expected me to say some, like, I think, big thing. And that feels good, too, going, okay, well, maybe you believe in me like that. So what I've been doing is just having conversations like this with good people I've met over the years, kind of rekindling some of those. So for the past 2 years, part of 1 year, we were doing a deal, and then part of the next year, all of the next year, was, transitioning team and trying to do some integrations with products and stuff. And I feel like I've been underwater for 2 years, and that's nobody's fault. That's just part of the deal. And it was been so refreshing over the last 3 weeks, as I've just filled up my calendar with really good conversations with people and just seeing how I can help and support them. That's been really fun. I've got a friend here locally. His name is Jeff, and we've known each other for 7 years, and we're talking about some things to do that won't be WordPress related. We will use WordPress. I'm now, Matt, this is so funny. It's kind of like a little kid in me to go, oh, I'm still in the WordPress community. I'm just a WordPress blogger.
Yeah. I saw some.
Now they go try to bum tools off of people. Yeah. I'm like, hey, could I have a free account? No.
You go back to iThemes. Can I get that unlimited license again? I'm just curious. I saw somebody post something the other day on Twitter, or tweeted out on Twitter, that was like, what would you do if you didn't do WordPress, or WordPress went away, or whatever? And I was like, I would just be a landscaper with a really great website. Like, I would be somebody who like responded to contact forms and like had this awesome like lead generation magnet for cutting your grass, because I don't have to change anybody's colors of the grass over there. It's always green, and I'm just cutting it. Like, don't ask me to do anything else.
There's a couple things I'm learning, Matt, that you might find interesting, and I'm trying to share some of these experiences because I think they're helpful. Because as painful as they are as I go through them, may be helpful for somebody else. But one is, I've spent 11 years selling products, software products, particularly for WordPress, right? But that other people, my team, built. And most of those ideas weren't even my ideas. And that I got really good at that. I can brag about my friends like you and other people all day, every day. Now it's switched gears to I need to sell myself, and that has been a challenge. I like to think of myself as a humble person, And so when you think, okay, now if I'm doing, for instance, coaching and consulting, I got to sell my experience. Not everyone knows me, you know. I've got a very good reputation, I think, in WordPress, which is the bulk of the conversations I've had. But now I'm kind of reboot. Like, I live in Oklahoma, and I tell people, I said, I'm more well known outside of this state than inside.
Yeah.
Because I've spent, because of the nature of WordPress, right? And that has been a challenge of self doubt, insecurity, and then another skill that I have to add. At some point, I need to make some money,
Right.
and I got to be able to say, this is what the value I can do for you. And that's been a very humbling, often painful experience, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just on a podcast this morning. We talked a lot about confidence, and that is something that I have, from a really young age struggled with, even though I grew up in car sales and selling cars and things like that. And one would assume just like, well, you're in this selling environment all the time, but everyone struggles with that like thread of confidence, and not many people can walk the fine line of that. And that is to say, there are those who are confident who are arrogant, but they, they are confusing arrogance and confidence. And those are the people that we look at and we're like, God, I don't want to be like her. She's way too arrogant. And then there are the people who are confident, but are just too humble, where they're unwilling to talk about the values that they can bring. Is there anything that 10 years ago, is there the 10-year-old Cory that you would look at now and say, you know what, those one or two things that I thought I was doing right in the beginning of iThemes, what lessons can you apply to this new adventure of yours?
Absolutely. The biggest one, this is on my mind, and I've been talking about this with friends and offline mostly, and going, I built, a platform with iThemes. And we built a really good platform. We were able to, spin out new products, grow our team, offer more to customers. And then I sold the platform. Okay. And then now in the starting again phase for me is I wasn't adequately building up another platform. And I'm using that kind of generic term to say, I sold that. I don't have access to those customers, unless they, maybe follow me on Twitter or whatever else. But I sold the platform. And I think what I would have gone back and said is very consistently and regularly, maybe once a month, do something. And and my brand did get built as iThemes went, absolutely. But I think it would have been way more consistent to say, build my personal brand, whether that's corymiller.com or whatever it is, very strategically with an audience that I could potentially go, okay, what else could I offer this audience? I didn't do that. And along with the skill sets I mentioned. So now I'm kind of, I've got like 360 email subscribers on my personal website. That pales in comparison to what we built at iThemes. It's not even a blip on the map. Right. And so I've got wealth of relationship, which I fundamentally believe it's all about relationships, really good relationships with people that open opportunities. But that whole building a base to have something to potentially, step off of one platform onto another, I wish I had done that strategically over 11 years. Really, just once a month. And it's hard to say that now because, there's times, this, you're in your business trying to work on something, and then you get some time. You're like, okay, the ship is selling good, smooth. And then, okay, well, I'll go over here and do a personal project. Those can become distracting at times, but then you get over here and you got, carved out time. Now I can do this personal project. And then something invariably happens and it pulls your distraction. So I think like once a month would have taken some expertise or something and built an audience that was separate and outside of that core group of who we built at iThemes to have something more than what I had, 3 weeks ago.
That's just, it's an amazing thread of thought, because a lot of people come to me, and I'm sure you too, and they're like, I'm trying to get this business off the ground. This product isn't selling. I can't reach the right market, or I'm building something really awesome. I can't wait to get it out there. And they're like, so what should I do? And when they ask that question, the younger me is in their head saying what I was saying when I was in their position, going, he's going to tell me about, SEO and pay-per-click ads and, pricing and how to, convince somebody to buy this. No, it's about starting that audience. And if you haven't started that audience, you haven't started that connection, you're already too late. Not to say that you can't do it, but start doing it right now, because that's such a boon when you launch to rely on. And right. And when you, like you said, I have a small list compared to what iThemes, but it doesn't matter. At least you have something to catapult. I'm open for business. I just told these dozen people, it's better than nothing. And we'll build on top of it.
The other part of this equation, that's the practical, having something that would help me, propel the next business, for instance, when I say platform. But the other part of it is identity. For so long, I was the founder of iThemes. I mean, that was just like you and I have kids, we're father of, in my case, Callaway and Lillian. And then at some point, 3 weeks ago or maybe a year ago, I'm no longer that identity we have attached to it. You're wearing an iThemes shirt or hoodie, and we were joking about that. My name will always be attached, I'm sure, but from a personal identity, and you and I have talked about mental health a lot, but from an identity standpoint, I don't have a lot of hobbies. I read books that benefit business, activities. I don't like to, like you said, you could start a landscaping company or whatever. I can't. If my wife asked me to fix something at the house, I break it worse than it was originally, And so I didn't have some of these side things, and that the identity, and I saw it with some friends of mine that had, exited their companies, and I was like, okay, I was aware of it, eyes wide open, but that was a struggle. Still is to some degree. Now, my current biggest struggle isn't that my startup baby is no longer mine. That's secondary. That's way down the list for me. I'm much more attached to the people on the team, and even maybe to some degree, of course, the customers, but the people on the team. That was probably the hardest thing, is saying goodbye to a role that I saw those people or interacted with those people all day. And, some of the best relationships I've had in my life, and friendships, and I care about them personally. And now I'm no longer working with them every single day. And that's part of that identity. And then starting again thing is, they're still my friends. Personally, relationships, work-wise, no. They're doing their thing. I want them to do their thing. I'm going off in a different direction. But that was, that's a hit. That's something I don't think a lot of people think about it. And it's harder when way tougher when you get into the situation. I'm sure you dealt with that too.
Yep.
Matt. You're Matt Report, right? The studio, and now you've got a different role, and those are all, maybe it's our little Twitter bio or whatever, but I think we really attach, or at least I do, a lot of our identity and purpose and meaning to those things.
So now you can just tell me if this question doesn't make sense. It's along that same thread, and this is something that I've struggled with, and it's a lot about what you're saying here, at least I feel, is detaching yourself from identity, right? Cory Miller, the blogger, the consultant, the coach, the iThemes founder, and Cory Miller, the legacy. He started this. He was, leading the charge for the Div nonprofit. And now this new chapter. How are you going to, I guess part of this question is, are you evaluating, am I creating a new identity through my career, or now do I want to create something that's more legacy? And how do you balance that? Because, and real quick, I always think about burning the Matt Report down to the ground, right? like you said, I'm more known outside of the state than in the state. And I have a local podcast that I do with entrepreneurs, and I'll be quite frank, it's a lot more satisfying because I'm meeting these people face to face. I'm shaking their hands. Podcasting is new to them, and they're like, this is amazing, right? It's one person out of the many thousands that listens to this show, but it feels more gratifying. It feels more legacy-like than Matt Report branding-like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I always felt like I approached our work in the past with purpose and profit. You gotta have profit. I never, I didn't apologize for making money. If we did a good job, we should be paid well. And I always balanced the purpose side. Like I wanted what we did to change people's lives, make people's lives better. So it wasn't that was missing. That was always there. The biggest highs I got in my life, and joys and rewards, were hearing customers say, your tools changed my life because I was able to start WordPress freelance business. And then the team and things like that were affected by being able to work in a great environment and do work they love and enjoy with people they really like. Now, second phase, I go in my mind, purpose first, then profit. And I'm at a place now where I don't feel like it wasn't a mutually exclusive thing. It was always a balance. But now I think I want purpose. I really want to chase purpose first, and the profit will come. It needs to be there. But that's my focus today. Ask me in 6 months and a year from now. But I think that's how I'm wired. But I really, in this next phase of going, we need to, make our mortgage payment, for instance. We need to put food on the table, that kind of things. But it's really an emphasis more on saying, let me look first to purpose, and which has really helped me. What am I interested in? Can I apply my experiences, my talents, my strengths to help make somebody's life better? And it goes through the filter first of purpose and then to profit. With business endeavors specifically. So I think that might be the change. And so what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. What I was about to say is you're what it sounds like to me is you're in what I'll call like a market research phase, in a rebranding phase, to reach out and talk with folks like me and to get the word out there that, hey, there's going to be a new Cory Miller out there. I'm exploring what's happening. And, what you're doing, I'd imagine, is, a little bit of research and development on the new product or the new service or the new Cory. But this time it's not just going to be, how do I make a new plugin, or, whatever it might be, theme or plugin, whatever. It's going to be, how can I, create a product of value, and then, use this time that you've given yourself, what most creators say as a runway. You're giving yourself this runway to say, okay, research and development, market research, let me feel what's out there, and then boom, let me come up with version 1 of whatever this next thing might be.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's very much a reinvention. As you were talking about that, I was like, yeah, this really is a reinvention for me personally, and then business. I have no desire, and also I signed, some documents that perhaps, I won't be doing WordPress plugins and themes, which is totally fine with me. But in this next phase is reinvent and go, okay, what do I really want to spend the next, with iThemes, it was when I started it, I want to be committed for 5 years. And then we got to our 5-year mark, and I was like, well, am I going to renew? And I did. And then I didn't, right? No. But this next phase is, what do I want to spend in the next 5 to 10 years doing? And in this reinvention stage. And I tell you what, I've talked to my friend Jason Schuler and other entrepreneurs, and there's a huge amount of luck that played into my story. And I'm totally okay with that, by the way, because I feel like I took what luck I got. I was in the right place, right time. But I took every bit of luck I got and tried to make the most of it. And now I'm trying to get lucky again. I want to see opportunities. I guess you could say I stumbled into WordPress, but I was ready. I was at the right time, right place, and ready. And I want to redo that kind of thing of going, what else is out there? Start from learning and curiosity and passion and purpose and those type of things, interests, and say what opportunities may come of that. And I feel like I'm optimistic and hopeful that that will happen again. It won't happen the same way, I'm sure, but I'm ready to be surprised again, because I never knew, January 1st, 2008, I didn't know 11 years from that date we would be making the bulk of our money from plugins, security, and maintenance for WordPress. I'd have been like, number one, I know nothing about any of those things. I'm like, not even close to being an expert. But it was that meandering path of purpose and profit and all that kind of stuff that got us there. And I want to be surprised again and go on a new adventure again. And that's where my
and number 2, you called it iThemes. So you were it was never iThemes plugin security, and maintenance. So you were just like, wow, that came out of a left field.
Exactly.
story arc of season 8 of the Matt Report has been about the change of WordPress, the software, factually with Gutenberg and sort of the big shift in the editor, the change of WordPress in the business landscape of WordPress. Again, plugins, themes, hosting, that kind of thing. And obviously you've had a huge vantage point for all, typical WordPress products. Is there anything that you see as opportunity still for those people who are listening, opportunity in the WordPress space, or anything that you'd comment on the WordPress ecosystem landscape that, might be something that you see as maybe the next sort of jumping point for most people?
I think the debates around, versions and features and things like that are healthy when done healthy. Like Gutenberg stirred up a lot of conversation, which I think is good for the platform. We need people that care about the platform. But the thing that has been resonating with me is that WordPress is not about the software. It's not about the code. It's always about the people. That's what made WordPress so special. The code, the software is awesome. It's going to get better. These things with Gutenberg, whatever that will inevitably come up, will get solved. But I think we kind of forget sometimes that it's really about the people. I mean, people are the ones that use the software. People are the ones that make the difference, that contribute to code, that talk at WordCamps, that build cool products. And some of that, I think, gets messed over. The magic truly in WordPress is not the software. The software is pretty cool. I love it. It's really the people that are so passionate around it, and that what it enables people to do: live great lives, get noticed through a blog, build a commercial plugin business on top of it, do hosting like Pagely. All those things are really magical about it, but at the core, the core thing is always the people. And I think sometimes we probably get too much in the minutia of the code and forget, like, it's really the people that drove it. The people that moved from movable type over to WordPress that made it really skyrocket. The people that continue to build and extend it and do podcasts around it. That's really the true beauty of it. And I'll tell you what, man, I've rarely seen that. WordPress is really special. I don't think people really understand what that community aspect really truly means. Outside looking in, outside WordPress people going, I don't really understand this. Yeah, it's really weird and it's really cool.
At the top of the show, I mentioned I wouldn't put you on the hot seat, but I've changed my mind. I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Cory. If Matt had tapped you on the shoulder and gave you Yost's job as head of marketing for WordPress.org, what would your one or two things be as your initial to-dos? In other words, if you were leading the marketing of WordPress.org as Yoast is today, what's your first 1-2 punch that you'd give to kind of change the marketing perspective of WordPress?
Ooh, that's fun. Okay. So I think the biggest thing is if you log into WordPress.com, and I've asked people, I said, when was the last time you logged into WordPress.com? And by and large, on the either agency or commercial product developer roles, the people I talk to the most, they go, oh, it's been like 6 years. For me, it was 6 or 7 years when I logged in, back when the Gutenberg notice happened. And then you look in, and it's fast, it's beautiful, modern designed software. And then you go back to a self-hosted WordPress.org site, and you're like, oh, it's clunky, it's a mess. The first thing I would do is champion and push. I know this is the marketing side, but you got to get the product right to market it right. And the dashboard is a mess. The reason why I picked WordPress over Joomla was it was a helicopter dashboard. WordPress now is a helicopter dashboard. We know it because we log into it and see it every day, but brand new users, right, they're going to be like, when I logged into WordPress.com compared it to .org, I was like, oh my gosh, the disparity was so bad that you go, this feels old and outdated. Right. And then you don't get it on a good host like Pagely, and it's slow and it's clunky. And you click on, it's screaming fast on WordPress.com, and good for them, right? But there's so much of a disparity, and I don't know if we fully as a community realized that we've got to level this thing up on the dashboard side. Technically, I don't know what all that means, but we need to get a clean, modern design interface that doesn't overwhelm users and say, screw this, I'm going to go to Wix, Squarespace, Weebly, WordPress.com, whatever it is.
That's, I would say that's definitely one of the challenges. That's definitely one of the things that Gutenberg is looking to solve, even though it's starting with the editor. I believe that experience is going to expand and sort of capture the whole onboarding process to WordPress. And this is a particular challenge that, I know a host of other people, not just myself, have been bringing it up for years now, is the experience of WordPress is too fragmented, because of folks like you and I who are able to build our own products and our own approach at experience. So all of a sudden, an end user gets, 6 or 7 of us in there, and we all, deploy our way of doing plugins and our way of setting up options, and they're looking around, they're doing things, and now page builders are a huge piece of the puzzle of building out a website. And then the whole hey, I'm experiencing WordPress, but you're experiencing WordPress with like a dozen developers that are all talking different, languages. And then at the end of the day, if the user's frustrated, they just say, wow, WordPress was terrible. But it wasn't WordPress. It wasn't WordPress's proper fault. It was just, there was all of these different mixed experiences in there. So definitely a challenge for, Matt and Automatic and core contributors to WordPress. I would like, and this is just an aside, it's not really a question, but if you had feedback, I would like to see some kind of effort where there's a council of third-party plugin developers that all have this common agreement of, okay, here's how we'll do design language for options pages, right? And if we can all sort of agree to this flow, maybe that's better for all of us in the long run. Starting with dashboard alerts. Right? I don't need 85 dashboard alerts of different call to actions and colors and animated GIFs popping out at me.
Yeah, I think this isn't exactly what you're talking about, but I think, Morton at WordCamp US this last year, brought up an advisory council or some kind of board or some more people to contribute voices and to have a voice. And, I know it's a meritocracy, all that kind of stuff, right? But I think there needs to be more voices. I do grant that there needs to be one person that finally makes the decision, but you can't just say, well, go start fixing bugs or patching code to have a voice. I can't do that.
Counts me out
right?
too.
But I can do videos. Yeah. And so there needs to be more voices. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I thought that was a good conversation to start. We need to have those kind of conversations of who else is helping drive. And I hope that maybe one piece is that, Yoast as the marketing team person, whatever he's called there, that will help that and more people. But there needs that, I think, for the direction of the software. Because honestly, it's a kind of a black box of how decisions ultimately get made. I have my own theories about it, and I can't kill myself. But
that's what this show is for.
That's what this show is for. Yeah, I think there needs to be more voices. I thought that was a cool concept to think about. I know Drupal has similar things, and I'm not saying that's an ideal model, but there needs to be more voices able to contribute, and then their voices be heard. I remember back in 3.0, Matt, you remember this too. Menus were it was around menus, and enough people in the community made a big enough stink about it that it got pushed a little bit to get it right. And then we saw the Gutenberg stuff, and it was like 2 days before WordCamp US. It's here. There's something amiss there that I think adequately, there were so many very strong opinions about it that it should have caused a little bit more caution. Now, here we're on the backside and everything, and I get that. You got to just push code at some point, maybe. But there needs to be more of a conversation around that and listening. It's not just talking, it's listening back and going, maybe these people have a point.
One of the things I think that could have helped in all of the chaos of, Gutenberg and leading that and who are the leaders, who are the decision makers. And, I still continuously point back to Jetpack as the, forget Trojan Horse. It's out in the open now. It is the product that is, coming from a company who was led by Matt who once said like, "Hey, all of these people who are charging for plugins, that's not cool, man. That's not cool." And then Jetpack came around and became the biggest of, monetization Trojan horses in WordPress. But we're past that, everyone. My point is, hey, if there were some more clarity and transparency around that, and they actually approached the conversation of Jetpack as a startup, or that typical, and you all did this at iThemes, like, we're startup, we're hungry, here's some of the awesome features we have coming out, and it's clearly it's monetized, and maybe you're not disclosing revenue numbers, but you're talking about growth and you're excited about it, and you're just discussing it as this incubator that's happening in this awesome plugin, instead of just like sneakily dropping in like call to actions to pay for premium services. Like, just come out and say, this is our monetization vehicle. Let's all just like get on board with it, and that's what has driven me nuts the most about all of this roller coaster ride up until this point.
There's a lot of conflict and potential for conflict there. Jetpack has been prioritized, for instance, at WordPress.org for a long time. We all know that. I mean, everybody has seen it. It's like, it's cliche now, right, to say Trojan horse, but because we all know it. It's an obvious fact now. Now, I want to say one thing is I always have trusted and respected Matt as an individual, and thanked him personally to his face for WordPress. I haven't always agreed with the decisions and things. But Jetpack and Automatic and relationship is going to get more uncomfortable because there's money sitting here in Automatic that very smart people that expect a return have invested in it. And then we have this open source. Now, I think he's balanced that for the most part. Not the way I would want it, but I think he's balanced it for the most part. But going into the future, again, having more voices at the table, I think is probably a good thing to happen. And I mean, you just said it alone. Jetpack's the reach of it, right? And a couple switches of the flips of the switch, and things could get really interesting. I know where my mind goes if I had control, right? So it's a really interesting relationship, and I hope, and I do have hope that those conversations will be navigated in the best interest of not just one party, but the entire community and the platform and the people into the future. I really have hope that will happen. It'll take some people standing up, though, and letting their voice heard, like Morton. Yeah. That was pretty bold to say that, to do what he did at WordCamp US. And it'll take more like that to have bold conversations to make change happen.
I 1000% agree. All right, so final message here in the podcast. If there are people out there listening to this that you, Cory Miller, would say, hey, what do you want of me? What is it that you want Cory Miller to do? What kind of people do you want to talk to? What are you looking for that people in the audience that could potentially help you with? Do you want to connect with more freelancers, more product owners? In other words, use this as a way to reach out into my audience, only because I trust you. Like, if somebody's out there to say, hey, help Cory out. What does Cory want to hear from my audience that might help him in the next chapter? What is it, Cory?
That really makes it, that really feels good. I'm really grateful for that, Matt. I love talking to entrepreneurs. My next phase, who I'm really interested in working with, are teams, leaders and teams, emerging leaders, key leaders. What we did at iThemes for 11 years is take people that were so, talented, and just give them an environment to really flourish. And that's kind of where I'm one of the areas my next path is helping teams, individuals on teams, emerging key leaders on teams, and I always love working with entrepreneurs. So that's kind of the broad categories. And then, I'm open ears. They can go to my website or hit me up on Twitter or whatever else and tell me what they think I should be doing. And Lindsay tells me I'm on a listening tour, and I very much am on a listening tour. But thanks for letting me
It's awesome.
do that.
So everybody who's listening, it's CoryMiller.com. He promises maybe 1 or 2 blog posts a month.
Oh yeah, I'm back and getting that publishing muscle.
That's
going
awesome.
Again.
Go to CoryMiller.com. Anywhere else they can reach out to, Twitter, of course. Awesome.
Cory Miller 303, but that's
awesome.
Perfect.
Everybody else, thanks for listening. It's mattreport.com, mattreport.com/subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode. All right, I'll pause or end that. I'll stop my